Everybody, welcome back to my YouTube variety channel, Miss Linda C. Jones. Sitting before you once again is my dear sweet friend, the one, the only, Kathleen Calder, historian of the city of New Orleans, Louisiana. She taught many years English
and
journalism in our at a Catholic high school right here in our historic hometown of New Orleans, Louisiana. And so Kathy came up with this idea that I just absolutely love. She wants to share with you some in-depth research that she has done about a benefactor of New Orleans that most New Orleanians and maybe even the world is unaware of. So my dear friend, take it away. I can't wait to learn about this historic benefactor of our beautiful city.
Okay, all of you yats of New Orleans, I have a challenge for you. What does the streetcar line, the St. Charles line, what do the Nine Muses and the first gas company in New Orleans have in common? Bet you don't know. In May of 1793 in Manchester, England, a young baby was born whose parents named him James Henry Caldwell. Caldwell became an actor in England at a time when actors were barely a step above gypsies, tramps, and thieves.
That's a Cher song. I'm just kidding.
I know. I did that deliberately.
I had to add that in.
At 23, as a young actor, he started with a British actor-manager named Holman, who was putting together an acting company to come to America to perform. Caldwell arrives in 1816 as an actor in Charleston, South Carolina, in the Charleston Company of Comedians. He becomes so popular with American artists that he becomes the second leading man of the company and begins to build quite a repertoire of characters. In 1817, he and Holman bumped heads, and he creates his own acting troupe, and they begin to do a circuit of Washington, Philadelphia, Norfolk, and Alexandria. Now, to New Orleans. Prior to 1812, La Nouvelle-Orléans était très français, and the Vieux Carré are where all the blue-blooded Creoles who are very proud of their ancestry. Following the War of 1812, there was a great influx of les Américains coming down the Mississippi River. Now, at this time, the only theatrical performances in New Orleans are in the Vieux Carré en français. Caldwell is looking to move his company, and he is approached by some of these emerging American businessmen to create an English-speaking theater in the city. Now, at this time, there's a very strict distinction between les Créoles in the Vieux Carré and les Américains, who are settling above the neutral ground of Canal Street. So Caldwell and his company come down the Mississippi to begin an English-speaking theater in New Orleans in the rented St. Philip Theater. Now, this is in 1819. The company officially opens in January of 1820 with a play and a comic piece, which was typical of those days. During the first year, they present tragedies, farces, and comedies. And Caldwell introduces Italian opera to the city as well.
Ooh la la.
Ooh la la.
Oh, but that's French.
During this first season, he performs nightly, and he's also the manager, the financier, and the creative director of this troupe. This humble beginning would have a major, unexpected impact on the city over the next several years. Because of the summer heat and the malaria yellow fever bouts which occurred, he took his company back to Charleston, South Carolina in the late spring because they had fewer health issues. But he signs a 3-year lease at that Orleans Street Theater so that there will continue to be American-speaking theater in the city. For the next 2 years, he and the company perform annually in New Orleans in the winter and early spring, then go on to Charleston. In 1822, he joins forces with S.J. Peters and A.D. White to begin an American quarter. He chooses the section above Canal Street in the Faubourg Sainte-Marie. And on May 30th, 1822, he lays the cornerstone of the new American theater on the west side of Camp between Gravia and Poydras. The new theater opens with a novelty, gas lighting. He had seen it used in England on a trip home, so he brings back a gas machine and an operator, and his theater is the first building in the city to be lit by gas.
Wow.
The American Theater on Camp officially opens January 1st, 1824, and this marks a turning point in his career. He begins to do a Western circuit of Natchez, St. Louis, Cincinnati, and other towns along the Mississippi River, rather than going back to the East Coast. During these years, they are producing not only the standards of Hamlet and Julius Caesar and Macbeth and Othello, but they're doing School for Scandal, She Stoops to Conquer, The Bride of Lammermoor. So he's bringing more and more English plays here. He brings some of the finest British and American actors to New Orleans as part of his troupe. But even with his boundless energy, the theater is not enough to keep him occupied. In 1829, he obtains permission to light the city streets with gas.
Wow.
And he gets involved with the Second Municipality Council. So he thinks the gas plant's going to take all of his time, so he retires from the stage in 1833. 1834 to 1835 sees the construction of the first gas plant in the city between Perdido and Gravia in what was then Saint-Marc and Saint-Marie, now Magnolia and Robertson. In 1834, he gets elected to the Second Municipality Council, a position that he held for over 10 years. As the gas plant construction and his position on the council keep him busy, he sells his interest in the Camp Street Theater to two members of his company. By 1835, his boundless energy and the love of theater haven't been appeased, so he purchases land on St. Charles Avenue to build a new Temple of Drama. The architect is Antonio Mondelli, who was a very important contractor at the time. The cornerstone is laid May 9th, 1835 on St. Charles between Poydras and Natchez, now Gravia. The original plans call for a hotel, an arcade, a restaurant, and a bathhouse. The theater is meant to rival any other theaters in the old world or the new.
In New Orleans.
In New Orleans.
Wow.
It is one of the most luxurious theaters in the country when it's complete. It cost, at the time, $320,000. Now, that was big money in the 1800s.
Man.
And it had a seating capacity of 4,000.
And we have pictures.
And
okay.
here
Let's
is
zero in.
his Temple of Drama. Now, isn't that a magnificent building?
That is phenomenal. Extraordinary. Wow.
And then inside, look at the inside.
Oh, wow. That is
New
beautiful.
Orleans had never seen anything like this.
Oh, man.
And all of this is going up in the section of Les Américains.
And what year again was that?
And this that starts in 1835. Then he builds the St. Charles Hotel with 100 rooms so the actors as well as visitors can have a respectable place to stay. That hotel, this is the first, and it burned later on, but he rebuilt a second one.
Oh, wow.
And that one stayed in New Orleans on St. Charles Avenue until 1974. when it was taken down and the Grand St. Charles Hotel was supposed to be built. Well, it's 2019 and there ain't no Grand St. Charles Hotel.
Oh, okay.
It has been said that there's no way to overstate the importance of the role of the majestic St. Charles Hotel played in the evolution and history of the city. When construction starts on these first buildings in 1835 in the American sector, the area above Canal Street is not much more than wilderness because everything is centered in the Vieux Carré and its surrounding areas. When the hotel is completed, a British travel writer calls it the finest piece of architecture in the New World.
A British writer.
A British writer who had traveled here and seen it.
Wow.
The neighborhood around the hotel and the theater flourish. By 1830, and the hotel is designed by Gallia.
Oh,
Gallia,
as in
for whom Gallia
your
Hall.
hall? Okay.
So it shows that he's working with the best of his time.
And I believe, don't we have a little Rex toast there and a King Zulu toast there as well?
Yeah, until 1974 when the second one came down, yes, they stopped there in front of the hotel.
Wow.
So in 1837, now, he's not going to be outdone because we've had one British travel writer, but if he encourages travelers, how are they going to get to New Orleans? So he gets involved in dredging the river to make it more navigable so more people from Europe can come to La Nouvelle-Orléans.
Oh, was he the one that when there's tours of historic homes, they talk about how the river comes closer and closer to the homes now because of the movement of the river?
Mm-hmm. And part of that was because he saw to it that they dredged it so that foreign visitors could more easily get into the city.
Oh man, that's incredible.
Then, and I asked you earlier about the streetcar, he begins the first St. Charles Avenue Railroad to allow people to reach his hotel and theater. It is the forerunner of today's St. Charles streetcar line.
And where we call them streetcars, other places in the country call them trolleys, right?
Mm-hmm.
As in clang, clang, clang. Like notice my musical reference?
Because of his theatrical background, he names a series of streets that cross St. Charles Avenue after the 9 Greek muses. Because after all, you've got to have the muses as part of your theater. And so we have those 9 streets crossing St. Charles Avenue named for the muses. That's Caldwell's doing.
That's incredible.
Now, then in 1842, the tide begins to turn. A shop in the next block catches fire and destroys that gorgeous theater.
Oh.
And the theater and the hotel are both burned.
Wow.
He remains in the city and continues to work with S.J. Peters to develop that American sector because more and more it's beginning to compete with the Vieux Carré. And eventually he rebuilds both the hotel and the theater. But the financial toll is huge. Now, over his life, he was married twice. The first woman was from away from here. The second woman was a New Orleanian. And they did have several children. And after the second wife dies, he moves to New York to reside with a friend and dies September 11th, 1863, at the height of the Civil War. And the amazing thing is, with all the blockades, his body is put on a steamship, the Morning Star, and is sent back to New Orleans and arrives October 11th. It took a month for him to get here. He is then taken to the Roman Catholic Mortuary Chapel on Rampart, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and he is buried in the family tomb in Cypress Grove. And yet nobody knows who he is. James Henry Caldwell, the unknown benefactor of the city of New Orleans.
Wow. And you know, that particular church, isn't that church historically
Yes.
also known for taking care of sick people with
Yes.
yellow fever?
Yes.
And didn't it sort of become a mini hospital?
Yeah.
Was that going on before Mr. Caldwell was brought
I'm
there?
not sure, to be
Okay.
honest with you.
Okay.
But
That's amazing.
But like I told Linda, you know, there's so many things in New Orleans that we take for granted.
Yes.
We ride the St. Charles streetcar. We see the muses. We mispronounce them. Good, darling. Only in New Orleans are going to be terpsichore and melpomene and calliope, okay? Not terpsichore and melpomene and calliope. But it's because of this.
Calliope, darling?
Yeah, good, darling, calliope.
Oh my God. My friend, shout out to Louis Carrillo, my drummer friend. He's going to love that I just did that. He's been begging me. He's going to love what you've done because, you know, he helps me with my channel. He's going to love that because when I go into that, he says, Linda, you could go viral with just doing a whole video like that. Hey, Louis.
Hey, darling.
Louis, you're looking at an English journalism professor here in New Orleans. Well, Kathy, that is absolutely fascinating.
I just think it's a shame that for everything that this man did for the city, that there is no memory of him anywhere. There's nothing named for him.
So sort of like one of those unsung heroes or...
And when I was doing some of this research, within the last couple of years, I went to the cemetery specifically.
Did you find him?
And I found the family tomb, but the fencing around it is very badly destroyed. And he had 5 or 6 children, but over the years, I don't know what has happened, if there's still any of them left or not.
And when he was brought back to New Orleans, where was he again?
He was in New York.
He was in New York.
He passed away. The Civil War was midway through the war.
So he was visiting New York?
He had been living with a friend because his second wife had passed away. I don't know what his relationship with the children were.
Oh.
But he had gone back to New York, probably with a theater friend.
Wow.
And passed away there, and then his remains were sent back to New Orleans to be buried.
Well, that is absolutely fascinating. And, you know, I've always been mega fascinated with New Orleans architecture. Our former music director, Mr. Brian Messon. Hey, Brian. Brian had bought this New Orleans architecture series book years ago when he directed music here. And, you know, everybody, you know, Brian and I are really good friends. And we would drive around with the book and we would find the houses in this phenomenal, I believe it's a series of books. Before Brian left New Orleans, he had purchased a house that was, the neighborhood was being renovated on Spain Street. I want to say it was an 1840 shotgun style home. And so the neighborhood came back up. But the house across the street from the one that Brian had purchased was in the book. So we always found that to be fascinating. Well, I can't thank you enough for this amazing architectural just really gem of knowledge that most people here in our city, as you had stated, are unaware of. I just can't begin to thank you, Kathy. This is magnificent. And so I've had a fascination for architecture for many years, and then Brian and I had gotten into it, and now how phenomenal for this to come together in such a way that you're bringing something to me that is about architecture. So this is amazing. Would you like to add anything else in concluding? I mean, I cannot thank you enough for the research, for the pictures, for your theatrical dissertation, because let me share with everyone that Kathy also has a degree in theater. And so that was so enjoyable. I was riveted. I was fascinated. I'm feeling like I'm in class. I felt like I was in class with a college professor. So I can't thank you enough. But anything else that you'd like to say in conclusion?
Since you mentioned that, the funny thing is that I would never have known about Caldwell, but I was taking an American theater history class at UNO in 1969. And the professor told us we had to write a paper about American theater history. And he threw the challenge out. He said, I always throw out this guy who was very influential in the city, and nobody ever takes me up, and they take me up, and within 3 days they tell me they can't find anything. Well, English major. So he gave out Caldwell, and I picked it up and started hunting and got so fascinated by it that it's because of that class that I wrote a paper, which is at UNO, because I discovered it's referenced online, which really
Oh,
surprised me. But what I gave y'all tonight was from a PowerPoint presentation that I had done for a historic New Orleans thing here at St. Francis.
that's wonderful.
But I had to scramble to find it because Linda said she wanted more information, and I was like, oh, shoot, I'm not going to remember that.
That was
Well,
wonderful.
I hope you enjoy it, and I hope the people out there, especially New Orleanians, see this and say, wow, I never knew that.
And you know what? I also want to do a shout out real quickly to my amazing, incredible, wonderful, special, talented nephew and godchild, Ryan Curtis Baker. Hey, Ryan, can't wait to see you. Ryan, sweetie, you were born in the city of New Orleans, Louisiana, and this is part of your legacy,
Heritage.
your heritage as well. So, how do you like that? We just received a college class from the one and only Kathleen
Oh, for
Calder.
heaven's sake.
Well, I'm so thrilled. I can't wait to post this.
I
So
hope people enjoy.
I think people will, and probably my hashtag is going to be New Orleans architecture, because one of the things I've learned in my research about the internet and all of that good stuff is that hashtags will draw
Yes.
searches. And so I learned about that, and so I want as many people to experience this as possible. Kathy, you are a gem. You are a treasure. I thank you with all my heart for your friendship. And any time that you want to be a part of the Miss Linda C.
If I
Jones
think of another
YouTube
topic.
variety channel, in addition to those times that I just pull you over and say, hey, will you read this? You're welcome on my channel. So everyone, you've learned a little bit more about mine and Kathy's and Ryan's historic hometown of New Orleans, Louisiana. And I can't thank you all enough for being a part of my channel, for liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting. And have a great day, a beautiful and blessed day. And yes, you see a little statue that, hey, this is how we're supposed to treat one another. Think about it. It's biblical. You know what this image represents. May God bless and keep you all. Bye, everybody. Bye,
Bye,
Kathy.
y'all.